Assalamu alaikum again. I'm sorry for everybody to enter. Right, okay, so before we go on to the next chapter, right, does anybody have any questions about what we've discussed so far? If you have any questions, can you type your question in the chat box, please? Right, the next chapter is regarding wuzu and ablution. So why do we need to do wuzu? Right, okay, we have a question here. Why do we shave the whole body? Right, okay, so a quick question here. The question is, are we allowed to shave any other parts of our body? That's basically the question here. Men and women are allowed to shave other parts of their body. Okay, so for example, shaving the legs, shaving the arms, any other parts of the body, you are allowed to shave, but it's against Islamic, you could say against Islamic etiquette. It's against the desirable. Okay, because especially for a man, it's a part of their masculinity to keep hair on their legs and arms, etc. Okay, so if a person did shave any other part of their body, they would not be sinful. Okay. Right. Okay. So the question is, why do we need to do wuzu? Because wuzu is a condition for touching the Quran Kareem. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentions the Quran Kareem, innahu la Quran Kareem fi kitabim maknoon la yamassuhu illa al-mutahharun. There are certain actions of prayer which cannot be done without wuzu. So a person must first be tahir, pure. Meaning they are not in a state of ritual uncleanliness, janaba. They must then also perform wuzu for the following actions. So wuzu is a condition for touching the Quran Kareem. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as I've shown you over here, says that indeed it is a noble Quran in a register well protected. None should touch it except the purified. And here what it basically means is a person with wuzu only. Okay. A person can read the Quran Kareem from memory without performing wuzu as long as they are not in the state of ritual impurity. As long as they're not touching the Quran Kareem. If a person wishes to read the Quran Kareem on their tablet or their phone, then they must have wuzu if they are touching the words with their fingers. So you have a mobile phone. If you're going to touch the Quran Kareem, you can hold the phone, but you are not allowed to touch the screen with your fingers without wuzu. An additional option would be that you touch the Quran Kareem with a stylus pen. If you use a stylus pen, then touching the screen with the Quran Kareem on it would be allowed. But without wuzu, you would not be allowed to touch the screen itself. So like I mentioned, wuzu is a condition for salah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually mentions in the Quran Kareem the method, the 4 farz of wuzu. So, O you who believe, when you rise to perform prayer, wash your faces and your forearms to the elbows and wipe over your heads and wash your feet to the ankles. This is actually mentioned in the Quran Kareem. This is why these are 4 farz, 4 obligatory acts in wuzu. So why do we need to do wuzu? We need to do wuzu if we do one of the following actions: perform sajda tilawat and sajda shukr, performing the tawaf around the Kaaba, so the question here is, can you put a piece of cloth on your hands and then touch the Quran Kareem? Yes. So if a person doesn't have wuzu and they need to touch the Quran Kareem, or they need to move it to another place, then they can touch the Quran Kareem with another cloth. Okay, a person would not be allowed to touch the Quran Kareem with their sleeve. If they don't have wuzu, they don't have wuzu, they can't touch the Quran Kareem with their sleeve, but they can touch it with another cloth in order to maybe move it to another place. Okay. The next question is, does a person need to perform wuzu if they have done the ghusl? So they've done the whole bath, they don't need to perform wuzu. The answer is, if a person has just performed ghusl and has not performed any action by which a person's wuzu will be broken, then they don't need to perform wuzu before undertaking any of the above prayer actions. Because when you've done your ghusl, you've basically washed the parts that need to be washed for wuzu. Okay, as long as you've done that when you've had a bath, then you don't need to do a separate wuzu. You are not allowed to touch the Quran Kareem if it has a cover. So what I'm talking about is, as we call it, a juzdan, the cover that is attached to the Quran Kareem. You're not allowed to touch that without wuzu, because the cover, because it is attached to the Quran Kareem, it basically follows the rulings of the Quran Kareem itself. So what are the farz acts? What are the farz acts of wuzu? So they are in Islamic jurisprudence. Farz means compulsory. So if it's not done, then a person's wuzu will be invalid without doing, in this case, these 4 actions. So farz means compulsory in wuzu. If a person misses any of them out, then wuzu will not be valid, and any prayer performed without wuzu will be considered invalid. So it's really important that we understand what the 4 farz of wuzu are, and we actually do them properly. A person should perform the wuzu according to the sunnah method, which will enable them to gain the maximum reward. Although if only the farz acts are carried out, which are the 4, which you can see on the screen, still wuzu will be valid. The previous slide that I showed you before, why may a person only perform the farz acts of wuzu? Sometimes you may not have time, or it may not be possible to perform the farz acts of wuzu. So there are many reasons, but 2 main reasons are lack of time and lack of water. A person may be at risk of missing a salah if they perform the whole wuzu. Okay, there could be a situation where one may be traveling and there's only a single sink with many people waiting to perform wuzu, and time's running short as well. So again, common sense would dictate that a person should only perform the 4 farz of wuzu. Okay, because there is a reason here. Sometimes a lack of water. There are many places in the world where water is a precious commodity. In England and where we live in Britain, we are very fortunate that we have access to water whenever we want. So in situations where there's a lack of water, there may be instances where only farz actions can be done. A person may also be traveling and only have a limited amount of water with them. So again, they might only have enough water to perform the 4 farz of wuzu. So what are the 4 farz of wuzu? It's on the screen. You can see washing. So there are a total of 4 farz. Washing the arms, including the hands up to and including the elbows once. 3 times is sunnah, once is farz. washing the whole face once. This would be from the top of the forehead to the bottom of the chin and from one earlobe to the other. Performing masa of the head, wiping the head with water, at least quarter of the head. Quarter of the head is farz, and the whole head is a sunnah. The head starts from the top of the forehead and finishes at the top of the neck, so it needs to be at least a quarter of that area. Also, washing each foot once up to and including the ankles. So all this needs to be done once. As long as it's done once, a person's wuzu would be valid. And you've got to remember that all these actions are compulsory. But for farz to be accomplished, only once would be sufficient. No, the farz is not in the order. First of all, the order of the farz is washing the face first, and then washing the elbows up to the elbows, and then making masa, and then washing the feet. Okay. And just like I mentioned regarding ghusl, you got to make sure when you do the 4 farz, you wash them in such a manner that no part is no hair is left dry. There's a hadith which says in one of the books of hadith that the Prophet ﷺ mentions wailul aqab finnar, to the nearest meaning, that woe to be those ankles, those heels in the fire of Jahannam. Because sometimes when you wash your feet, you might be washing the top part, but the bottom part of the feet is left dry. So that dryness could be a reason for that portion of the body burning in the fire of Jahannam. So it's really important that we make sure that no portion of those four places are left dry. Because if they're left dry, then the salah will count, the tawaf will count, etc. Moving on to the sunnah of wuzu. Now, different books mention different aspects of the sunnahs of wuzu. These are basically actions which our Prophet ﷺ used to perform regularly when doing wuzu. There are 13 in total. Like I said, in other books, you may find more. So let's have a look. First of all, making intention at the beginning. This does not have to be verbal. Now, what you've got to remember here is that if a person doesn't make intention, wuzu will still be valid, but by not making intention, a person won't receive the full reward of the wuzu. Reciting Bismillah, again, if Bismillah is not recited, a person will not receive the full reward of wuzu. If a person recites Bismillah halfway doing wuzu, again, that person will receive the full reward of wuzu. On the contrary, if a person is eating and a person forgets to recite Bismillah at the beginning, if he recites or he or she recites Bismillah awwaluhu wa akhiruhu in between, then it will be regarded as if a person has read the Bismillah in the beginning. And this is not the same for wuzu. Number 3, washing the hands up to and including the wrists 3 times. Start with the right hand and then the left. Brushing the teeth with miswak. Miswak has many benefits. Miswak is different to a toothbrush. And regarding miswak, there's many virtues. Miswak has 70 benefits, and one of the greatest benefits that a person would be able to recite the kalima when a person passes away. So brushing the teeth with a miswak. Gargling 3 times. If a person is fasting, ensure that the water does not pass down the throat while gargling. Keep the water in the hollow of the mouth while fasting. Passing water into the nostrils 3 times. Again, if a person is fasting, ensure that the water does not go up inside the nose. Ensure that the water always stays in the hollow part of your nose and under the nasal bone. If a person has a beard, khilal of the beard, to pass wet fingers through the beard. Khilal of the fingers and toes This is to ensure that the skin between your fingers and toes is also washed. Washing each part 3 times. Masa of the whole head once, because 1/4 is farz. Masa of the ears once. Wuzu performed systematically in order. So a person is not starting with washing the feet. You perform the wuzu in order. According to some imams, for example, Imam Shafi Rahmatullahi, according to him, making a systematic wuzu is farz. So if you were to wash the feet, first of all, the wuzu would not count. Wuzu performed continuously in parts, washed one after another, so that you're not basically washing your hands first and then it's dried and then you're washing the next part. So washing it in such a manner that each part is wet while you're washing the next part. And yeah, we'll end the session today. We are following the syllabus of Talim al-Haq. So we will cover all these sunnahs and farz in detail again. But this session is just making sure that you understand the main parts of hygiene. Okay, right, guys. So I'll finish there. Does anybody have any questions before we end the session?